my Dядо from my father's side came from Resen, and from the Resen area. The village is Kушия, and he came in 1917. He came to America first, actually. He stayed 6 months, and then he went to Toronto. And I said, Dядо, why did you leave America to come to Canada? He said 1917 was the Red Scare, the communist, Soviet Union. And he said, with a Slavic name, here they threw rocks at you. And he said, when I went to Canada, they just threw eggs, didn't hurt as much. But anyway, he stayed in Toronto. And then my Baba and my father came a little bit later. And on my mother's side, they were from Егейска Macedonia, the village Въмбел in Kostur area. And my Dядо deserted. He was drafted to the Greek army, and he deserted the army and ran away and came to Canada, and with the idea of bringing his wife and children after, but it was very difficult. He finally, and meanwhile, my Baba that was there died as a young woman, and my mother and her brothers were raised by their grandparents. They were getting elderly, and my Dядо finally managed to get them to Canada. They came in 1947, and then my parents married and so on. Now, my Dядо, both Dyados were not MPO members, but knew they were Bulgarian Macedonian. And my father's, the Dядо from my father's side, is a founder of St. George, Svetي Георги, Macedonian Bulgarian Eastern Orthodox Church in Toronto, and his name is on the plaque. My other Dядо wasn't a member of the MPO, but he loved the Tribune. It was all in Bulgarian. That's the only newspaper he read. It would come every month. He'd wait for it. All his news came from the Tribune. Everything. So I learned from them that we have Bulgarian roots. They call themselves Macedonian. They didn't call themselves Bulgarian Macedonian. They call themselves Macedonian, but they always explain we have Bulgarian roots. Okay, and that was it. I had no interest. The MPO, I saw pictures from the old days of conventions, but in our church we had the pictures, but I really had no idea about the MPO. I wasn't that interested. I was still too young. And then when I was beginning university, we have a church, Svetي Георги, we had a split. Our priest, Father Vasil Mihailov, who was the founding priest of St. George, was kicked out of the church, basically, in the early 70s, I think it was. Yes, but he was kicked out by people who were more Macedonian, were not Bulgarian Macedonian. And this one person, individual, I'm not going to mention names, but this one person, basically, we were like an MPO church. Everybody was MPO members, everybody was, anyway, he was, more on the other side. And basically had the church board get rid of our priest. And my parents went to St. George. I went to St. George. I was an altar boy in St. George. But when they kicked out our priest, as a kid, as a young student, I thought, no, we got to follow him. He baptized me. He married my grandparents. He married my parents. He married me after eventually, and I just thought, no, we're going to follow him. We have to be loyal to him. And so what he did was he had a meeting and invited young people to the meeting, and it convinced me anyway. So I went to my parents and said, we have to go follow the priest and we'll form a new church. And at first they were reluctant. They said, no, your grandfather founded this church, we're still the Macedonian Bulgarian church. But I said, but look how they treated him. And anyway, I said, I'm going there. Stay here if you want, but you'll be embarrassed your son went there. Then they followed me. When he called this meeting, I met Larry Korolov. I didn't know Larry before this. I knew him from the church. You know who Larry Korolov is, right? So wasn't going to the same church, but I didn't know him. But anyway, I met him there. And he got me hooked on the MPO. He talked about the Macedonian history, about the Bulgarian roots, and he gave me the details I didn't know. I was too young. My grandparents died before I was old enough to really know what questions to ask. But Larry knew the questions and knew all the answers. And from him, I owe it to him for being in the MPO and for believing what I believe now in terms of our Bulgarian roots. He was a big factor in this. And so I used to go to conventions. I was joined the YMPO when they for a youth group kind of thing, and I was reading. And then in the late '70s, our chapter, our YMPO chapter, it was YMPO Asan Avramov, it was called. We started a publication, Shostava, like a little, like not a magazine, but a little booklet every month. And I started writing articles. So I started doing research and writing articles, against the Greeks, against the Serbs, and promoting the Bulgarian Macedonian identity. And Larry was the editor. I was a contributing editor. I would contribute articles. And that got me more interested because I started to do more research, right? Very important research. And I was demonizing the ethnic Macedonians. I was, bad. That's how I was before. But as time went on, as I got older, like I'm 72 now, and then all of a sudden now I started thinking differently. Because I'm started thinking, the fighting, those generations are gone now. The generations now, even amongst our own people, they're intermarrying with Canadians and Americans, and the identity is dissolving away. Yes, and they call themselves just Macedonian, but never mentioned the Bulgarian root part. You know what I mean? Whereas before they would say, I'm Bulgarian Macedonian, they would say, I'm Macedonian. Yeah, that's sad, of course. That's bothered me. So then I thought, we've been fighting them. We've been trying to say that we're right and they're wrong, and we're losing. I looked at the numbers of the MPO, how we declined in my lifetime, like from when I started to now, the convention, this is nothing. We used to have, the meetings weren't like from 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock like we do now, basically. They were from, I'll give you an example, Chicago Convention 1973. The meeting started on Saturday morning. It finished Monday night. Every day, arguing, coming up with ideas. But the arguments weren't against, ethnic versus Bulgarian. Everyone was Bulgarian Macedonian. It was more about ego, I'd be better president than you. You be this kind of stuff. But there was passion.